what it takes to be a good leader.
So, the greatest leaders I've seen are the ones that have high empathy and high EQ. Your leadership style will still be very basic and very transactional. We have lots of experiences that we try and expose the students to the opportunity to learn more about others, and because of our privilege is to learn more about others, less fortunate. They get to hear the stories the real stories of people who've either homeless at that time or have been homeless at other times.
Kids don't have access to both the parents at the same time, or one parent is missing. What one is mental health, and what other education outcomes do you see?
I still see it going really well when the parents work together in a positive way. Yes, their relationship is broken down, that's happened, but in their separation, they still hold the children's best interests at the core to their relationship. The parents don't work together and they actually almost weaponise the children. It will end badly because you are driving your child away from both of you.
The mindset of working with an AI employee in a hybrid workplace is a different kind of a mindset. You have a hybrid workforce which is part human and part machine.
Probably the biggest difference that'll be you in your career will be how you collaborate with others, how you relate to others, how you lead others.
There are tools, or there are agents called AI companions / AI friends. There's always all affirming, always positive, always available. So accessible every time, happy all the time.
It is a deeply flawed relationship. No relationship should be or is always positive, always on your terms. People who do go down that rabbit hole, we're losing the ability to debate philosophies, different ideology, different viewpoints, and to actually debate vigorously a different view, as opposed to hating the person, and because they've got a different view on something that I have, that person's a bad person. We can actually still be friends and disagree on 2 or 3 ideologies. That's okay.
Before we get started, please subscribe so that you never miss an episode of our cutting-edge contemporary conversations. Thank you. Thank you, Ross, for your time today, and thank you for coming.
No, it's a pleasure.
I need to talk to you a bit. We've been trying to get this thing done for at least more than a year. Keen to talk on education as a sector and education policy and your views on those, because I think you're doing things very differently at your college. But before we go into education policy, I would love to get you to share your background, your story, and you landing into the education space.
Okay, my journey is probably quite different to most. It hasn't been linear by any means. I grew up in Kalgoorlie, so to someone from Kalgoorlie to be principal or head of college of a school like Wesley is actually unusual, where traditionally it's someone who's come from overseas or even over east. So I come from a long generations of mining, so through the Eastern Goldfields, various parts, but I was born in Kalgoorlie, and my father unfortunately was killed underground at Great Boulder when I was 18 months old. So my mother brought me up from then until about I was 11 when she remarried. So knowing what I know now, there was no safety net for spouses who had lost their partners in the mines. My mum has always been one of my heroes for the fact that how she was able to still bring me up and give me opportunities, but also the values that she instilled in me despite a lot of adversity. So in country town, the underlying culture is sport. So I fell into line with that. So you tried every sport you could, some with success, some with limited success. And I guess the sports that I sort of started to gravitate towards was field hockey, cricket and tennis were the main ones, although still playing soccer and AFL and those type of things. And during school I used to sort of cruise, would be the best way to describe it. And then in year 6 I had this amazing teacher who really, I look back now and she really transformed my life about I guess, seeing things differently. And I guess the things that she showed me, she was a graduate teacher, so would have been early 20s, maybe 22, 23. She actually was from Kalgoorlie originally. She was Italian. Her parents were immigrants from Italy. She was a music teacher mainly. And she obviously saw in me potential and also the fact that I was probably cruising. So she opened my eyes to music and the arts and doing things a bit differently to what I'd done in the past, not just that sport culture, but also for the first time I started to do a bit more work at school. So I look back very fondly at Miss Stefani. I mean, she was one of those teachers for me that really lit a spark that no doubt had a positive impact on the rest of my life. My mother particularly, she remarried, as I mentioned, when I was 11, and she thought that if I didn't broaden my horizons, that I would have gone straight into mining and continued the generational sort of engagement with mining. And after her experience with her husband being killed underground, she wanted something different for me. But even if I came back to mining, so be it. So they were looking at boarding schools for me, but then moved to Perth in early high school. So I did year 8 at Eastern Goldfields High School, then moved to Perth to Churchlands, which was a fine government school that I
one of the
really
top
enjoyed.
ones in the state.
Yeah, it was at the time. I mean, it still is the music school. It was a strong music school when I was there, but it was either 1 or 2 academically as well, and still had a full co-curricular with sport and other opportunities. And I can still remember that first week coming into classes where in the past I'd be in the top math set and cruising, and I remember going in that first week and going, gee, there's a lot of really intelligent people in here. So for me it was a good lesson, and even just coming to Perth in a sporting sense where I was a big fish in a very small pond. When I came to Perth I realised very quickly that, gee, I'm not that good. So if I wanted to go any further academically, but also with sport, that I would I'd need to work a lot harder. So, and that was probably around the time that I really started doing some coaching, mainly hockey with younger people, and it probably lit a spark for me about, I really enjoyed being around young people, but also having an influence, for the most part, a positive influence in their lives. So probably unconsciously, that year 6 teacher, Miss Stefani, but also that coaching and really being around young people probably was the moment I look back now that I was going to always go into education and into teaching. At the end of high school, I entered teaching, but I was playing a lot of field hockey. So I was in the Australian Institute of Sport. It was WACE originally, then the Australian Institute of Sport. Was the Australian under-21 team. So the next 4 or 5 years was pretty well full-time hockey, and then studying part-time. So it took me a number of years to finish that first degree. And I guess that's where my career was a bit different to the norm, where I did a few short-term roles in the government schools. And I look back now, the fact that I'm very fortunate where I've worked in lots of different sectors, which I think broadened my experience, but also my perspective as well. So that initial part was a few contracts in state schools, in high schools. One was at Gira, one ironically was back at Churchland Senior High, back to my old high school. And then at that time I had to make a decision about, do I continue trying to pursue that hockey career? And I knew that I was not in that top sort of 16 or 24 that were going to be the Olympics or the World Cup. So do I really dig in and try and get into that top echelon, being slightly outside that, or be happy with my career as it was and do something different? So rightly or wrongly, I chose the latter path, and then moved overseas for a few years, mainly based in Vancouver, which again broadened my horizons.
And played ice hockey?
I had a few goes. I was really awful at it. One, I couldn't skate, but I was okay with
logically in my head. Yes, he wants to move to Canada to play ice hockey. Yeah. That's why he's going there, not for the money.
No chance. No, there's no money in hockey, in field hockey. Plenty in ice hockey, but I played a few social games, and oh boy, I was in a lot of trouble. So I played a bit of field hockey there, but also just worked in different roles. So I look back fondly at that time, living overseas, and there was actually quite a few Australians who had young working visas at the time, but I was fortunate. I lived with Canadians and lived the full Canadian experience. Then I came back to Australia. It was about April when I did come back, and getting full-time teaching positions there is tough. So, which actually ironically ended up being a blessing, where I'd come back and there was no jobs immediately. And through previous contacts who'd coached me in state juniors, was aware I was back in Perth, and they were living in Geraldton. Jeff Wood was the name of the mentor that had looked after me when I was younger. But there was a businessman, David Carruthers, who owned Geraldton Business, or building company it was, put together a package where Geraldton would have a regional hockey development officer. Okay. So it was the first one of its kind in the state for any sport. And so that was an amazing opportunity where I did that in summer, and then Tennis West did the same thing. Sorry, the hockey was in winter, I should say. And then tennis was in the summer. And it was a really good opportunity because you got the experience of working with the state board, with the local board, and about the governance and finances that are involved with that, but also sponsorship, but also you were out teaching young children in primary schools as well as high schools. You were coaching adults. You were helping juniors coming through the state pathways. So you got a wonderful experience, rather just being in a school and learning in one particular area. You actually had a breadth of experience across many different areas. So that was 2.5 years. And then out of nowhere, I applied for a position as head of phys ed and sport at CBC Fremantle, not thinking I'd perhaps get that role. But there'd been a Christian brother who'd been the headmaster at St Patrick's in Geraldton who'd seen me up there unbeknownst to me, and then had become the headmaster at CBC Fremantle and really gave me a chance. And I asked him probably a year after I'd started in the position, you had other more experienced people who'd applied. Why did you give it to someone who was very limited? I guess really I'd probably taught about eight terms total. And his response was interesting. It's something that I've used as I've recruited people, the fact that he knew there was huge potential. The skills and the technical knowledge he knew that I would pick up very, very quickly, but he knew that my work ethic and ability to build teams around me, that within a short time I would catch up with others and probably go past them. So I had 8 years working there. Ended up as a deputy after about 5 years. And really enjoyed my time there. It's interesting. Often people, when I worked there, would say, what's it like working with the Christian Brothers? The narrative and perception around the Christian Brothers, unfortunately, is usually negative. But my experience with them was amazing. There was 5 Christian Brothers who were still involved with the school at the time, and they taught me the true meaning of education as a vocation, where it wasn't just a case of turning up and teaching the subject. It's about taking the time to get to know the young people, and a huge work ethic, and also the values about trying to care for people. So in many ways, working with those Christian brothers was transformational, where they taught me a lot about what it means to be a true educator rather than a teacher. So, I mean, and I still, I think it's a shame that the Christian brothers and many Catholic priests and even a lot of Christian leaders are tainted by some bad decisions made by the hierarchy in many different churches, where instead of actually dealing with the issues that were there, and they were there, there's no denying, but rather than deal with the issues, they were moving. Because I guess what is sad is the legacy of the majority has been tainted by the decisions of the hierarchy at the time. So, another valuable lesson in leadership. Quite often the hard decision is the right decision, and you may think it's a better decision in the short term, but in the long term you pay the consequences of it. So quite often when you're making a decision, you think, well, this is the right decision. I know I'm going to wear flack. I know this is going to be controversial, but a good lesson for me to always come back to that, well, is it the right thing to do? And then do that rather than what might be the easy decision in the time. So
very intriguing story you have, or life story you have. I want to go back in terms of what was the initial conversation when you were having with your first teacher as a young boy? And that's the first ignition inside you to see the teacher and then you be the teacher. So that transition of, coaching / mentorship / I want to help young people. How did that first ignition or in your heart and mind happened?
And again, it's a wonderful lesson for me, and of course I didn't realise that at the time, but I look back now, and she no doubt took the time to get to know me, to get to know my story, obviously, but also took the time and no doubt gently guided me towards things that I wasn't necessarily naturally attracted to. So, and because of that strong relationship where, I felt no doubt that she believed in me, that she liked me, that I would have done anything for her. So, the fact that I would have got way out of my comfort zone and joined choirs and been in school plays, 12 months before, that just wouldn't have happened. So the fact that I had such a deep respect for her because she'd taken the time to build that relationship, that's what I guess allowed me to feel comfortable stepping out of what was my comfort zone. So again, a wonderful lesson for life, but also for teachers, that unless you get to know the students in your care and they respect you, they don't necessarily have to like you, but unless they respect you, then that's not the difference between being a gifted and amazing teacher and an average teacher. So there's no doubt that she took the time to get to know her students. And it's not just me. So many people of that era, but even her career, she's a much loved teacher, and I've heard it so many times. And interesting, I'd been trying to get in contact with her just to, when I was late 20s, early 30s, and even in my 30s, to really thank her, because I'd never seen her once I'd left Kalgoorlie. And when I started at Wesley, I told this story to one of our community relations ladies, and it stuck with her, and she started asking questions. And they actually found her. And on my commissioning, which is the commissioning for my role as head of Wesley College, they actually found her and invited her to the commissioning. And my speech at the commissioning, I actually spoke about the legacy of teachers, but also the legacy that she'd left with me. So it was a wonderful moment where I could thank her publicly for what she'd done, but also I guess to send a message to all of Wesley about the value of educators and about the value of relationships and about believing in people and going the extra mile to try and get the best out of someone. So, so she's actually said subsequently that she never knew the impact she'd had on me. No, she'd followed me for a few years, but then had lost contact.
But probably she was doing the normal thing, what she normally did.
Yeah, she just kept
That was normal for her.
Yeah.
That was normal for her to behave that way. That was nothing out of difference.
That was in her DNA.
Natural behavior.
Yeah.
That's why she never thought that that was different. She was treating you differently.
Yeah.
She was just being normal. I was in a private school until year 8, and then I moved to a sports school. And the reason I moved because I wanted to play soccer.
Yes.
So I said, Dad, I want to be a soccer player now. I was doing karate before, but I wanted to be a soccer player, and I wanted to go to that school because the best coach in town is there in the state. And I was bad soccer player to start with, and from year 8, year 9, year 10, by year 10 I played for the state. So he transitioned me from nothing to a player who is representing the state. And I know the value of coaching, and when the power of somebody who knows you intimately, your mistakes and your weaknesses and your strengths, and then teaches you appropriately, and then pushes you hard enough to know that, and then we would not take a leave because the coach was so good. I used to I've never been to any family events, or I would never miss 2 sessions, morning and evening, during holidays.
Gee.
So 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening for the next 3 years. And that converted into a player for soccer for the state. And I think that's a very strong value. My dad was a hockey player.
Yes.
and sports was very common across all three of us. Sports was very common. So for you playing hockey, and I think sports teaches a lot in terms of work ethic and sportsman spirit. How sports has impacted your life, the way you see things and the way you coach further?
Yeah, there's no doubt it had a profound positive impact, but also there's a dark side to it as well. So first of all, the dark side is to be at that elite level, you need to be very selfish with your time, the amount of time you need to train. So the dark side of that is you have to become quite selfish. Yeah. So I look back now in my early 20s, about family, because you needed to be very, very selfish, but also you have to believe you're worthy. So you've got to be very careful that that belief doesn't become, turn into a blind arrogance. And I look back now thinking, there was aspects of my behaviour at a time when I was selfish and I was arrogant, which you needed to be in order to actually compete at that level. Because if you have self-doubt, that just eats away at you, and you become risk-averse and make so many mistakes. So I look back at that. That's probably the dark side of it, and it's something most important to be aware of it. I guess perhaps to just counter that selfishness and that arrogance. On the other side, the positives that teaches you is that discipline, where it's one question I'm interviewing, whether it's alumni or chatting to people who got to the top of their game, not just sport, in whatever endeavour they're in. You had talent, you had to work hard. What would be the percentage of the talent versus work ethic for you to get where you are? And everyone says 80 to 90% hard work. So anything that you do in your life that is special and you value, you've got to work hard for it. So for me, sport is a good example. I mean, music's another one too. Without that hard work with your instrument, you'll never become master or try and master that instrument. So the discipline is the first part. Team sports is also wonderful as well, because you learn how to be part of a team, a follower, and there's times when you need to be selfless and you need to follow where the team's going and where the leaders are, and to be successful in life, there's times you need to be a follower. Knowing when is the right time to do that is important. But also you learn wonderful leadership skills, whether it's you're given an opportunity to be a leader, but also watching others around you. You learn lots of wonderful lessons, but also lessons that are not so good. You think, well, gee, I'll make sure I won't repeat that, with the way that I try and lead people. So, yeah, sports certainly, there's many positive aspects, and something I talk about to the students my whole career as well has been about winning with good grace and losing without excuse. So, learning how to lose And in the end, it's no one else's fault. It's not the umpire's fault. It's not someone else in the team. We did the best we could and we came up short. We didn't take our opportunities, or we didn't work hard enough, or we didn't stick to the patterns and structures. So, there's good lessons in that you don't always get what you want in life, even though you're a good person and you've worked hard. But also on the other side, when you win, doing it with good grace, not being one of those winners that is rude and arrogant and obnoxious. There's good lessons in that as well.
Yeah, and then there's a win and a loss cycle, so it'll come back to you. From an education point of view, when you are running a boys' college or school,
so Wesley is co-ed up to year 6, so it's unique, and then boys from year 7 to 12. So there's only 2 schools I know of in Australia: Melbourne Grammar and Wesley College in Perth, that actually has that mix.
Dual model.
Yeah, it is unique.
It's very unique. I was listening to a news piece today. They were saying that some public schools are trialing, co-ed schools are trialing segregating boys and girls to primary schools to create better education outcomes for them. I don't know what are the learnings from there, but I want you to give us that understanding, that how do you see the difference between running a co-ed partly and then running just in a single-sex school?
Yeah. That's something I could talk about for an hour. So I'll try and give you an executive summary of that. The first thing is, I'm a great believer that we want a diversity of schooling options in our country. The fact that we don't want just one style of education. And the reason for that is different schools and different offerings will actually suit different families and different young people. So we want that diversity. So, we want the care schools. We want the academic select state schools or the sport specialist schools. We want low fee paying independent schools. We want co-ed independent schools, as well as the single gender as well. And then, because Wesley doesn't suit everyone, and I never pretend that it does, but it suits a certain families and certainly a certain type of students. Being co-ed in the primary school developmentally works really well for us at Wesley, and even our own 2 children went to a state co-ed primary school, and then they went on to single gender girls' school and boys' school. You get to that adolescent stage of 12 or 13, there are important things that are happening with maturity, where there are benefits of actually having that single gender education. But something I believe passionately about is, for Wesley and boys' schools, our greatest strength is where boys in that area. Our greatest weakness is we are boys. So there's attributes about being boys from 7 to 12 that is very strong, and our data will back that up. So things like the fact that the academic outcomes that the students get are better than the mean and the averages in the state. So a student who's getting certain marks in their NAPLAN, what they get in year 12 with their educational outcomes, there is a value add because the classrooms are more settled. We do specialise into different areas, which has better outcomes for the students in our care. The other one that quite often is counterintuitive to most people is the freedom for boys to try arts, to try different things. And we know the numbers of boys in our school that actually feel free to try the arts. Music's a good example, where we've got 580 students that do individual music lessons per week. So the fact that they value music, they enjoy music, and they feel free to do it. There's not this social stigma where they're scared of being good at music or trying music in front of their friends. And the same goes for drama, with mock trial, with debating, to work hard in their academic area. So, there's quantifiable advantages for actually having that environment. The weakness is you still need to have meaningful situations where you're mixing with other people.
Yeah.
And for me, it's not just gender. I mean, that's important. And it's not about having socials. I mean, yes, that's important, but really that is only one very, very tiny part of that. So what relationships, what experiences do you give the boys where they're mixing with, we've got sister school with Penrose, a wonderful relationship with them where we have meaningful exchanges, educational and different experience with them, but also it's other demographics. So mixing with co-ed state schools, with other co-ed independent schools. So having meaningful experiences with other schools. So even it's funny watching our program when it's tiered, even with Penrose, where we have days where we half the students will come to Penrose and half will come to Wesley, and we'll talk about respectful relationships. We'll actually do STEM activities together.
Nice.
We'll do some sporting activities together. And even it would have been 10 years ago if you walked into most schools, and even more so single gender schools, when they have a social, they would walk in and the boys would go to one side, the girls go to the other. But even in the last 2 weeks, I've been to quite a few nights, quiz nights and other socials that we've done. And then as the students walk in, it's just like they're friends and they're just talking and engaging whatever event it is. So for me, that shows that the girls at Penrose and the boys, they are well-balanced people that respect boys and girls, but they can go on to university, work, and actually work collaboratively in a respectful way with people from all walks of life, not just gender as well. So that's the abridged version.
Abridged version. Thank you for sharing that. In terms of educating boys specifically at that, age when the brain is being evolving, and then you need to learn how to relationships as one is that's a good example of that. But from a point of view of to be a good leader, what it takes to be a good leader, and then what are the things you think should be inculcated by practice, not just somebody's born to be a leader, but by practice, by hard work, by conscious choices. How one create good leaders or people who are more communal?
And I believe it's born and nature, so it's both, and both. And in many ways, I think if I had to say a percentage, your experiences and opportunities actually have more of an influence on who you become as a leader. For me, two parts to it. One is with the family, to continue to develop an empathy, because without that empathy and EQ, your leadership style will still be very basic and very transactional. So, the greatest leaders I've seen, and even amongst our student population now, the ones that have high empathy and high EQ. So, building those experiences and opportunities to be curious, to learn about others, but also understand how lucky we are in this country. But even for a school like Wesley, lucky country, lucky city, lucky school and lucky families. It's really important they get to learn how lucky they are, but also their privilege that they do have. So we have lots of experiences that we try and expose the students to the opportunity to learn more about others. And we have a wonderful Year 8 program that was well set up before I came, so I can't claim fame for it, but also I can talk about it proudly because it was done very well before I came to Wesley by previous leaders. But it's called Katajan, which is a Noongar word for to listen, important name as well, to listen. And there's 3 parts to this program where they're off-site, so they work from the West Australian rowing shed near Elizabeth Quay, so being geographically off the campus for a term, and then they finish with a camp at the end, which is an important part of finishing that term. And there's 3 parts to the Catagen experience. One is to learn more about your personality profiling. So they actually do some personality profiling, learn more about your values, who are you? And at year 8, that's a really important time to start thinking about that. And there's no doubt they ebb and flow throughout your life. But for a young person to stop and think at that stage, what are my values at this stage? So that's the first part. The second part is to learn more about leaders and leadership. And most importantly, there's not one style.
Which works.
Yeah, I mean, you need to be you. But also different situations require different styles of leadership. And if you think you can just do everything the same way, you're destined to have a pretty bumpy ride if that's your leadership style. And then the third part, particularly because of our privilege, is to learn more about others, less fortunate. So they connect with Tranby House, which is the Uniting Church outreach program for homeless people. And most importantly, they get to hear the real stories of people who've either homeless at that time or have been homeless at other times. And they learn more about disability, so they engage with wheelchair associations and learn more about that disability, but also engaging with Indigenous leaders and Indigenous people. And the camp actually finishes up on Murrapore, which is north of Kalgoorlie, about probably 2 hours, 2.25 hours north of Kalgoorlie. And we've had relationships with the elders up on Murrapore for over 20 years. And when they go on camp, they get to learn more from the elders about secret men's business, about connection to land and connection to culture. And I often say that every non-Indigenous Australian should actually go on a camp like that, because once you've been on one of those camps, you have a deeper understanding of Indigenous people all around the world, not just in Australia, about why they have these deep connections to land. And again, it's about empathy, about an understanding of why. The other part that we talk about all the way through the college is about service to others. Whatever way that, whether it's within your house, within your class, within the school, but also reaching out to other people outside the college. So, we're so proud that our students do so much for the community. Even our Year 12s, year after year, they don't have to volunteer, but each year, because we keep a tally of these things, they volunteer thousands of hours to others, and that's outside the community. So again, by the time they're leaving the college, the fact that they want to, there's no compulsion, they still want to serve others and help others, speaks to, I guess, the character and the empathy of trying to make the world a better place. So, but there's layers upon layers of trying to build that culture.
When you're educating boys, again, I think family plays a very strong role. And then not all families have mum and dad or parents around, and they're separated families. So, in these disjointed families or in families where kids don't have access to both the parents at the same time, or one parent is missing. What one is mental health, and what other education outcomes do you see between the boys, between the two cohorts with both parents and with one parent's not available, or separated families, either ways? So how do you see that playing up in education outcomes? Because what happens at home and school?
In growing up with my mother for up until I was about 10 or 11, I guess I understand it, particularly for young people, not just boys, to grow up without one parent. I guess I can understand it probably and empathise more than most. I was fortunate where mum, there was mentors, male and female, that mum always by stealth almost had around me.
That's
so
good.
I was learning from the village about what it is to be a good person. So I was a very, very lucky from that point of view. I guess I see, there's been an increase in the last 20 years of divorce and separation. Where I see it still going very well is when the parents work together. Yes, their relationship is broken down, that's happened, but in their separation, they still hold the children's best interests at the core to their relationship.
Yeah.
So the fact that they don't use the children against each other, and unfortunately I see that too often, but the majority still see their children as the centre of their past relationship, but also hold the best interests of their children at the heart of their ongoing relationship, and also being consistent about their values, about their expectations, about even just the mundane things about phone usage and all those mundane things. I still see it going really well when the parents work together in a positive way. In my experience, that is still the majority, but I still see examples where the parents don't work together and they actually almost weaponise the children, which unfortunately, in the long run, always ends badly because the relationship with the young person will break down to those parents in the long run. And I guess I'd love quite often to get those parents who aren't parenting together and say, have a look at what this is going to look like when your child is 18 and year 12, because it will end badly. And you both will be the victims of this because you are driving your child away from both of you. So I guess that's sad to see, but you can see it playing out. If it starts in a younger age, it usually ends badly. Whereas I do see parents still working together positively and getting wonderful outcomes from their children.
Wow.
I mean, phones and smart devices still are the biggest negative impact that we've seen on our young people. So that remains the biggest problem that we have as a
And does that
society.
ban on social media, which is coming, and what do you see and how it works, and how is that conversation happening at the school, or what's the initial reaction?
Well, it'll be really interesting how that legislation flows out in December, but more importantly, what does it actually mean in practical terms? And it is complex. So I think it's really important that we talk a lot about that legislation, that what are the safeguards that we're trying to put in to try and have some teeth to that legislation. As a college next year, we're putting in place from year 8 down that they'll have a laptop for school, but if the parents choose to select a phone for their children, that if it's brought to school, it is a retro phone, which means you can talk and text, but all the social media
is not there.
and the aspects is there. I mean, what we want to put in, that's for 2026. What we want to put in place for 2027 will be slightly different, where we're spending time researching different devices that we can slowly, with the parents as partners, slowly put more and more apps and more technology onto those smart devices. So, obviously delaying the social media in particular makes sense until 15 or 16, but there's other apps and other technology that is helpful and is beneficial. So, and also how can we educate our children about the safe usage, about their digital footprint, which we do anyway, but and then we can really educate them about the positive side of the connections with social media, but also what is the negative side as well. So that'll be a journey for us the next 15 months to really find the devices and the technology that can slowly allow the students, as they get older, to have more and more of the technology, which they'll have, that fully connected internet smart device when they're 16, 17 or 18. Whereas I think if we just ban it up until they're 16 and then give them this fully loaded smart device, I'm not sure that's going to work. So how can we actually work with the parents to slowly, developmentally increase what they're actually using? Yeah.
We are just at the initial part or initial stages of the fourth industrial revolution of the next revolution, which will be backed and supported by AI. And I'm using AI on a regular basis. People are, I have 20 plus years of experience. People have mentored me and supported me as a trainee or intern and told me what is right or wrong. And then there's so many people have educated me across my career. So today, if I prompt AI, the outcome which come out is I can see that, it's not good or bad. I need to go back and ask a bit more prompting. And because these days AI is taking the entry-level jobs, so the interns and the trainees will be probably less of them will be required because AI can give those answers. Go and do a research on that topic and bring me back some information. So that answers can be done through AI these days. So what's happening essentially, if the entry-level jobs are gone, for young people who are coming in, they don't have the opportunity to be trained and educated by their mentors and peers or employers. So how are you seeing that challenge playing out, and how you are preparing the young boys at your college?
There's a lot of layers to that question.
Yes.
And it's interesting, I guess. I mean, the example you chose is a really good one because if when you're an intern, the value of the intern is you actually, by going and researching and finding out more, that's how you build up this wealth of knowledge which you need in order to have these higher end positions. And it's even interesting, our experience in COVID, after about 12 months, 18 months, when there was a lot of interns and the young graduates working from home, and I can remember it about 9 or 10 months after there was a lot more online things happening, that a lot of the leaders within industries started to tell me the same story, whether it was in law, accounting, in finance, and those in particular. They started to realise that, we've had an intern for 12 months and they actually haven't learnt a thing.
Yeah.
And we're realising that when you sit in a meeting, that is only a small part of the learning.
Yeah.
The learning actually is the discussions offline before that meeting, which might be a strategy meeting, planning for that meeting, but also when you're walking to the water cooler, you just bounce these ideas off the senior leaders and the interns, as well as when you're walking to a meeting, what will happen if the client does this or they do that?
Yeah.
And then even when you finish the meeting, the walk back to the office or the next day, what happened there? Why did you say that? Why did you lead that way?
Yes.
Why did you take the conversation that way? So sitting in a meeting online is only a small part of actually learning, learning your craft and learning your industry. It's all the stuff around it that actually makes all the difference in you learning to be at the top end of your area. And in many ways, AI at the moment, I mean, who knows, in 5 years it might be so sophisticated. But I mean, I even know when I prompt and put things in, it comes out and it's 70%.
Good, yeah.
But there's 30%, hang on, that's not right. But also it lacks the emotion and the human aspects, which you can actually have just a run-of-the-mill research paper, but that's okay. But the one that is
good,
is further developed and doesn't have sometimes obvious mistakes, but sometimes minor. So that's the area where in education, again, prohibition is not going to work, and that's not going to prepare our young people when they leave school. So how can we prepare them best when they do leave school? And there's a few layers to this. One is the ethical use. So going back to our values about what is ethical usage of technology and AI, and really just stopping to make them think. Do you realise that that is plagiarism? That is whatever it may be. You're not giving credit for that work, which is clearly not yours. But the other part is where can I use AI to save time, increase productivity, but then where is the knowledge and the expertise to actually continue prompt crafting, but even to rewrite parts that actually aren't fit for purpose or clearly wrong, or putting in that human emotion which makes something special. That's, I guess, where our time and effort is being put into, that, there's positive aspects to save time, even teacher time, but what is the parts that we can use to save time, but what are the parts that we can use to make education even better and prepare our young people even better for the future.
And as you're preparing boys to get into the curriculum if they want to go in higher education as well, in some way or form, through what you're doing at school. Do you see with AI, because things are so evolving so faster with that the education sector, higher education sector, has to evolve that faster and change the curriculum to align? Because most of the things what one would learn, one could easily go back and forth prompting and then learn those things. So how do you see the landscape of the higher education sector changing or adapting?
It's changing for all of us. Every industry is going through this, and education is no different. And it comes back to what is important to learn. So whatever course it may be, what are the fundamentals that those individuals need to learn? But also, what are the efficiencies that the students can learn that AI will be a tool, and what are the parts that you need to actually spend time developing that knowledge and that experience and the expertise. So, it's not an easy thing, and it takes time and a lot of reflective time to actually think about what is still at the heart of what we need to teach people. I mean, there's some content and some things that are non-negotiable, but also knowing what's important and it's not important. I guess that is the key. But I mean, your point about changing so quickly, my goodness, I mean, every 6 months we're just having to, we need to pivot slightly again. So you can't just put something in place and think, that'll be fine for 2 years. I mean, twice a year we're stopping again and, how can we do this differently? Most people get caught up in assessment, being worried about plagiarism and assessment, and there's quick ways of adapting to that. And good teachers know when someone submits some work, they know. So putting in place ways where you can actually make sure that it is the students' work, and the take-home assessments are the easiest ones. But when students put things in, teachers know which has been AI generated and which is their work, because they can hold their normal work here, and then they see this and there's a mismatch. Whereas a good student can actually have that work, can get AI, and they can blend it into their own work. I mean, that's where the magic of AI adds so much value. So how do we teach the young people? You can't just prompt craft and have this document which is nothing like you and not fit for purpose. How can you take that as 80% there for you? How can you weave you and the specific knowledge of that situation that is correct? That's where the magic is. Not easy though.
Yeah. In the new workplace in corporates, there are people who have hybrid workforce. So they are employees and they are AI employees / AI agents, which are available all the time, and they're working and they are. So the mindset of working with an AI employee in a hybrid workplace is a different kind of a mindset, probably. And how do you train the EQ for young people to be prepared for that kind of environment when you have a hybrid workforce, which is part human and part machine?
And it's interesting dilemma, isn't it? For the digital natives, which are the young people these days, it's, I mean, for us, it's still an unusual abstract.
Yeah.
But for a young person who's growing up with technology, that separation is not as unusual as it is for us. But I say this to our students all the time, that you need to realise that probably the biggest difference that'll be you in your career will be how you collaborate with others, how you relate to others, how you lead others. In many ways, that'll be the point of difference between you and other people and your employability and success in the workforce in the future. So trying to explain to young people with sometimes limited success about how important that relational part will be.
Yeah.
So for them to understand it is important, it'll still be important. I mean, there's no doubt some roles, that coding and tech in those areas, being able to do that is and doing that in your vacuum is important, but you still need to relate to others to sell that product or sell that product to your managers or in the company you're in, or selling it to customers. So there still needs to be that human element. The other part, apart from really selling to the students, the reason for it is trying to find as many different experiences where they can learn how they can work in teams, how they can communicate orally with other people and lead teams. So again, going back to what I said earlier about the ability to be in different situations and work with different people and lead, follow and communicate effectively, it is probably becoming even more important than it was 10, 20 years ago. So I still believe it'll be a point of difference.
There's a new, within the, again, AI landscape, there are tools or there are agents called AI companions / AI friends.
Yes.
And then I was glad when you talked about your sister school and the interaction with, just as part of the same group. They are friends and they're working together. And when you have human relationships, humans don't agree all the time, don't affirm you all the time, and human relationships are not peppy and happy all the time. Whereas AI friends or AI companions, there's always all affirming, always positive, always available. So accessible every time, prompt responses, all affirming, positive, happy all the time. And again, US being US, it picks up technology and then just runs with it. And there are people who are accessing the technology and they're going down that rabbit hole. And for young people with intellectual disabilities or autism-based disabilities, that's further down the hole because you are socially, that is part of the disabilities that you're socially a bit lightly awkward. And for somebody to have the access of the phone and interact with this machine as a humanistic machine and then responding to you, and you're sharing everything, the fears, the happiness to this machine. There's a history. And the people who are going down the route of that, they want to be friends and long-term friends, and that's isolating them further. And with the higher speed, with the higher exponential. So, and again, I think the biggest game changer is the EQ, the way you want to train the young people to have that strong EQ to survive. But what do you see that?
It's a huge concern because of all the problems that you said, that it is a deeply flawed relationship. No relationship should be or is always positive, always on your terms. So it's a deeply flawed paradigm, which is hugely concerning. And as you said, people who do go down that rabbit hole, they go further and further into that rabbit hole and become further and further isolated, which is the worst thing for them. So as educators, what's really important is, and particularly students who are neurodiverse, is that education about what is happening to many adults and even young people, but also giving them the skills and the experience and protective behaviours to try and save as many as you can from going down those rabbit holes. And certainly it'll never be everyone, but trying to give them experience about the value of human relationships and the fact that there's highs and lows in any relationship that you have with anyone. And if things start getting hard, that's not the time to just walk away just because it's getting a bit harder. So the education around it, but also trying to give as many opportunities to build relationships with others which sustain them, and also protect them from going down these exact rabbit holes that are concerning.
I was using voice prompts for a week, and I had a paid version, and it's a different voice that responds to you. So I was talking to this voice, and then I chewed up all the minutes I had for a week in terms of prompting. So there's a limit to how much you can use that premium voice, whatever. And then after a week, that voice came back to the different voice. So it's a similar sounding humanistic voice, but different human.
Yeah.
As in,
So different tone, intonation.
But same outcome. Mm-hmm. But I disliked the second voice because I was talking to one voice. I was interacting with that voice prompt back and forth for 1 week. And just within 1 week, I did dislike the other voice. I don't know why. I said, no, I don't want to talk to that one. I want to have that one.
I want my first friend back.
Yeah. So, and being aware that this is the rabbit hole I might go into, but this is just prompting for different tasks. I'm not interacting from a friend point of view, but it's just that subconscious
bias, or you get used to something and then all of a sudden you feel uncomfortable because it's different. It's human nature.
And what if that is more of a humanistic conversation I'm having, and that's another rabbit hole I won't be able to so that was a good reminder to me that that rabbit holes are real and true, because I think the boys which come out, and as you talked about the social work, or they want to volunteer. I love that, the idea that, without being prompted or without being given a carrot.
Or compelled.
Or a carrot on the other side to do that work. I want you to talk a bit more on that, and in conclusion, if you can, give out clear differences for young men to, learn those things as part of their growing up and being mature and being communal leaders, or being more communal and social.
I mean, our responsibility, particularly years 7 to 12, what was society's perception of to be a man for my father and for what it was when I was young has changed very, very quickly. And there's no doubt that has been disruptive for many young men. So our responsibility is to talk about what are the positive aspects of, and quite often we talk about not about being a man, it's actually about being a good human being, which then takes away the masculinity / femininity aspects to so much is actually about being a good human. And again, that's about that empathy, about actually serving others. And you talk about serving others, the fact that for many men of my vintage, to even just help around the house was seen as doing something above and beyond to try and help the family, as opposed to something that is ingrained with you is what you do, and whatever it may be. It might be the domestic chores, it might be the gardening, but the fact that trying to ingrain that it's just part of being a good human being and part of a healthy household, that everyone is helping in all the different aspects, and we all do that evenly within the household. So trying to not bash boys, which and that was probably 5 to 7 years ago, where we were making the mistake as a society of blaming the boys right here and now about what had happened in the past, and things had and should and are changing, but don't blame the boys now. Present to them positive models about being a good person, someone who we think that they should try and be, someone who is empathetic, someone who will follow others, male, female, whoever it may be. When it's their turn to step up, they will actually lead in that environment to take risks and try things that are the non-traditional, that, you know, try and join the choir, be good at visual art, to try different things. So in many ways, try and present the positive rather than bash the negatives, and find opportunities for them to flourish and discover those different parts to what it means to be a man or a good human being these days. And something, I guess, that really still concerns me, you know, in this country and its other countries as well, is we're losing the ability to debate philosophies, different ideology, different viewpoints, and to actually debate vigorously a different view, as opposed to hating the person, and because they've got a different view on something that I have, that person's a bad person, and that is someone that I should hate. In the end, we share so much more in common. So teaching our young people the fact that we will have differences of opinion, and we can talk about those, and we can actually stop and listen and be curious, because sometimes listening to someone's point of view might actually change your own. And it's something even I've got to make sure at my age that I remain open and curious and not become fixed in my mindset, because so many of my views, you know, the last 20 years have changed as a result of being curious and actually listening to someone. Sometimes we don't agree, and that's okay. But it doesn't mean I don't like that person or that we are at war with each other. We can actually still be friends and disagree on 2 or 3 ideologies. That's okay. So I think that's what's, you know, something that we talk about passionately, that we want to keep teaching our children to be open and curious and debate rather than fight. And there's a subtle difference, but I think a big difference, because we want that open discourse, and we want difference of opinions, and we want to continue to talk about them openly and not get, I guess, cancelled or put to one side because you're too far left or you're too far right. Let's remain curious and talk to each other.
And that's the function of any functioning civil societies, to have debate, open forums. But if you suppress one side, whichever side it is, the other side will come in power and they suppress the other side. So there's no different. So eventually there's no progress for the sensible center or the majority of the population. If you have the one side just shouting at each other or saying, yeah, you're bad, let's cancel you out, that's not a good outcome longer term for sure. And learning to sit with the person on the other side, it's so powerful.
I mean, for me, Margaret Court is a good example where she has views on the religious far right that many people disagree with. But look back at her life, I mean, she still remains one of the best sports person this country's ever produced. Her service over her lifetime back into sport and back into others is extraordinary. But that's all been forgotten because of some views that, you know, I don't agree with many of her views either, but she's still done some amazing things throughout her life and doesn't make her a bad human being. So how can we engage with her to keep talking about the views rather than... And
also, you should see people at balance on both sides. You know, how much good you have done, how much people are meant to fail. And everybody's meant to fail. And everybody will do good things and bad things, whatever. But you should see for everybody for what the good they have done.
And it's, you know, even when I'm debating, we'll have parents who have very strong views, you know, left or right. Something that we've done as a community is we have 5 pillars of inclusion or diversity and inclusion. And those 5 pillars are about reconciliation with our Indigenous people. It's about culture, people of different culture. It's about gender. It's about neurodiversity. It's about LGBTQIA+. And after hearing the stories of so many alumni that went to Wesley in the future who were within one of those pillars, and to hear their stories at times really makes me sad because they had really tough times at Wesley, but it would have been, in all schools in that time. So I guess when I'm talking to people about that diversity and inclusion, I always come back to, do I want everyone within Wesley to feel safe? You bet I do. Do I want them to feel as if they belong? You bet I do. And do I want them to feel connected? You bet I do. Irrespective if they're Aboriginal, female, gay, or whatever it may be. So I guess in my mind, that's what keeps my heart open to listening to different stories and always stopping and thinking, how have we made that person feel? Have they felt safe, connected, and as if they belong? And if the answer is no, well, okay, what are some of the things that we might need to stop and think about our language, about what we celebrate, what we acknowledge, or what we actually ignore or not celebrate?
And for specific things, for example, sports is a good thing in which all of these cultures and traditions probably, whatever skin color you are doesn't make a difference. If you are good, you are good. You play well, you're part of the team. If you don't play well, you're sitting out there. And I think sports is a more qualifier, or creates by default equality across. It's more egalitarian sports because you cannot be there without being good. And there's only one thing we judge is, are you good? Yes, you're there.
You belong, yeah. And it's interesting, even the last 5 years, you think of the mistakes that have been made in sport and high-profile sports about race and also about sexuality, because they have been high-profile. I think we may look back in 10 years and say, gee, that actually shifted the dial pretty quickly because it was high-profile. There's no doubt it's uncomfortable, but does that mean change comes quicker? We'll look back and say maybe it did. So it'll be interesting.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts and thank you for your time today.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.